Hello, my name is Cornelius Henderson, managing partner of Cooperative Solutions LLC. We're a residential real estate development firm based out of Washington D.C. And today we're going to be talking about the 10 mistakes investors make when calculating home values. Whether you're a new investor, experienced investor, or just someone looking to buy or sell a property, you definitely want to take the time to review these because we keep seeing these mistakes continually happen over and over and hurt a lot of people in the current marketplace. And this current market is really not forgiving whatsoever. Definitely want you to check us out after the presentation at dcmetrorealestatedeals.com. ARV basically stands for after repair value. It's a basic real estate term. Essentially, we're going to define it as the market value of a property after all repairs are complete and the property is listed with the real estate agent. We're not talking about FISBOs. When you're talking about the value, you want to talk about 80% of the marketplace, which is dealing with a realtor. Market value is what the property will sell for now, not a year ago, not 6 months ago, not at some point in the future. Market value is also not determined by tax records or an appraisal. It has no effect on the value. Let's review, quite honestly, the obvious. When reviewing comparable properties, we want to choose homes that are within a half-mile range or a range that is relevant to your area. Naturally, a half mile relates more to the cities. If you're in a rural or suburban area, you want to choose a range that's relevant to your area to make sure that you're getting comps that are comparable. You want to choose homes that have a similar building style. For example, Cape Cod, raised ranch. You want to choose the same or similar number of bedrooms and bathrooms. Now, quite honestly, this is just the basics. Uh, you need to. A lot of people are making a lot of mistakes, and basically, this is what you want to avoid. You want to avoid getting into a deal, entering a property, and making one of these mistakes, and then it ended up being really fatal to your business. So, mistake number one, quite simply, is using sources other than the MRAS or the MLS to determine comparables. Basically, the MRS and MLS are your standard search engines that realtors, real estate agents use around the country, depending on their market, to list properties, and it's definitely the official source of this information. You should not be relying on tax records. You not rely on Bank of America's website. I haven't seen that in a while. Don't know whether it's up, but a lot of people have sent that to me. You should not be relying on Trulia, Zillow, or Haynes Crisscross or any other of these real estate sites. Now, all of these are relevant. I've got the iPhone apps, use them, things of that sort. But when you're talking about your comps, doing your hardcore numbers, and making a decision, you only want to be using MRS and MLS. Now, what happens if you don't have, if you're not an agent? Hey, you got to go ahead and you either get licensed or you work with a licensed real estate agent. But you definitely, if you are making a serious decision or serious, you definitely want to have the official comparables from the MRS and the MLS. Mistake number two, not throwing out the top of the range and the bottom of the range. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's look here. We do our search, and we see that we have 5 properties. First thing you want to do off the gate is take off that top one. I call this the A-Rod factor. Just because the Yankees go out and spend 275 million on A-Rod doesn't mean that you're going to catch someone else who's going to do that again. So you definitely want to take out the top of the range, and then once again you want to take out the bottom of the range. This is going to leave you with your middle range, and then you can either average these to get your average comps, or you can just say, hey, for the most part, the value of this property is anywhere between 199,000 and 215. But not taking out the top or bottom of the range is going to skew your numbers, and professional investors really don't like to see that when dealing with wholesalers and other people selling them properties. Mistake number three, using old and outdated comparables and not factoring in seasonality. In general, you want to choose sales in the last 90 days. If you can't gather that much data, you can go back 6 months. But what's really important is that you review the seasonality trend of prior years to see whether there's major dips and comparing the spring versus the fall, winter season, things of that sort. In general, there's a lag in the winter months, and it's really, really important when you're transitioning, going through transition periods, that you're looking at the values, because you're going to have to determine how long that property is going to sit, whether you're going to have to offer that discount when you're in those periods, if you're comparing comps to the summer versus winter. Mistake number four: not factoring in the market conditions. Now, it's kind of, this can got a lot of things to talk about here. Tax credits and government subsidies. We really saw this when we had the federal subsidies and tax credit. There was a blip that occurred before that April deadline, and you definitely saw a bunch of people rushing to get in properties. Well, there was a reason. It was that tax credit, and then it fell off. You have to understand those factors and the numbers, as well as the individual counties, especially in DC, state of Maryland, and Virginia. Individual counties are offering so many different incentives, and I imagine around the country, those need to be factored in, and whether they were time sensitive into what was moving the market at that time. Foreclosures, you can have the best deal that can hit all the numbers, and if it has a bunch of foreclosures on the block, that is going to significantly affect the value. Even if the numbers, meet Mayo, if you're an investor, if there are a bunch of foreclosures in a neighborhood on a block, that's going to affect the value, and just maybe, you're going to have to adjust what you think the value is in comparison to kind of the overall general market. Planning and zoning, this can go up or down, depending on what's going on. I know, the last couple of years, a lot of the hoopla has been the BRAC realignment, which has had a significant effect on values, as certain bases have closed down and certain ones have opened up. And definitely just what your local state and city and state county municipalities are doing, that definitely has a factor in the value of your house. Mistake number five: not factoring seller concessions in the ARV. This is really tedious, but we see it all the time. Um, Here's an example: you got a property that's over 210,000. You got another one that's over 200,000. Naturally, like, hey, property one, that's a better deal. That's more comparable. However, we look deeper. Seller gave $15,000 concessions on example one. Example two, again, it didn't give anything. And in essence, you had a net sales price in example one of 195,000 versus 200,000 in example two. These numbers are pretty close and pretty similar, but there are large differences when you get into a lot of the higher end properties, and a lot of properties, as I generally see, and I'm seeing a lot of wholesalers sending me deals, not factoring in the ARVs and completely inflating the number. When you combine a lot of these, you really end up in a situation where you're really skewing the values. It is really not accurate. Mistake number six: location, location, location. The old real estate adage. Well, this one's just put a little twist on it, because we're talking about just specifically kind of within a certain location. Is your property on a busy street or a quiet street? This is really important. I know a couple years ago I had a deal that I absolutely loved, and one of my partners said no to it, and I was pretty frustrated. But it ended up, being the right decision, because it was on a really, really, really busy street, and I watched the investor who did the deal, and they struggled. They struggled to move that property because they compared it to a lot of the other properties in the neighborhood, but those other properties were set back away from the street, tree lined streets, and didn't have all that traffic and congestion. You definitely want to look at Google Maps. This is something else that actually a hard money lender put me on to. What is around the property? It was a deal that I liked, and he just looked it up on Google Maps. It was like, man, you have a big industrial site across the street. I was like, yeah. He's like, no go, no go. So that's something I've definitely added into the repertoire. Look at Google Maps, see what's around the property, and making sure that it's something that's going to be desirable to to the home seller. And properties within the same zip code and neighborhood can be extremely different. This is some cities are just and neighborhoods are just notorious for differing block by block. So you definitely have to look at the specific location of the property you're looking at to determine the value. Mistake number 7: properties that are plus or minus 20% of the square footage of the target property. So price per square foot is a key metric in determining the value. So you can have the same housing style, but your bedrooms and bathrooms will not be as irrelevant as square footage is not as comparable. For instance, you got a 4 bedroom, 2 bath house, and but one is 800 square feet and the other one is 1100 square feet. And you're like, hey, it's a 4 bedroom, 2 bath, both colonials. This is comparable. They're not even close to being comparable because of that square footage. And a really important gauge is to look at the size of the kitchen, the master bedroom, and the closets, because these are the wow parts of the property that people are going to look at immediately. They're going to want some room to cook. They're going to want to room the decision makers in the master bedroom. They're going to want to be able to have a place for their clothes, their shoes, and whatever. So pay attention to the kitchen, the master bedroom, and the closets. Really important. Mistake number 8: disregarding craftsmanship and the repairs. I mean, this one is one of the big ones. Now these are just a few of the examples. Hardwood floors versus carpet. And I could even tell you, the type of carpet you're putting in there. I see certain investors, they're throwing in the cheap. The cheap Home Depot off the rack carpet, and that's just not going to work when the investor up the street put in some higher quality plush carpet. Stainless steel versus standard white or black appliances. You're putting in low E energy efficient windows and insulating the walls, and you're comparing it to a property that just has single pane windows and uninsulated walls. That's definitely a major difference. And then just cosmetic details. Buyers are smart now. They can tell crown molding. They can tell with your light fixtures. They can tell with your plumbing fixtures. What's quality, what's not. Whether the finishes match. Whether you're using, you're combining brass with satin nickel, and things of that sort. All of these make up, the value of the property. Mistake number 9: ignoring the days on market. Really important. So let's take this example. If we learned anything from what we talked about earlier, you're going to knock off the first one in the range. You're going to knock out the bottom of the range. So basically, out of these three, which one do you actually think an investor really likes? I'll tell you, it's that 30-day one. You want to focus on sales with days on market 30 days or less. So I'm looking at this. I see this range. I'm locked on to the 199,000 as an experienced rehabber. That's my value. Hey, I may get 215, but I bet you I'll sell it at 199 in 30 days before I wait for 215,000. The quicker I get my money and turn it over, put it in a property, the better. Mistake number 10: ignore neighborhood trends and expectations. Certain neighborhoods have a certain cachet. Do people expect a yard? Do people expect a garage? Do people expect a finished basement in this neighborhood? Do people expect a master bathroom? It is extremely hard to compensate for neighborhood expectations. You can have a deal that hits all the numbers you want, but if it does not meet the expectations of people in that neighborhood, it will not move. You will have a hard time selling that property. So basically, in summary, definitely want to, if you need to, review these over, take notes, kind of put these in your brain, but definitely try to remember them. And once again, we're currently looking to just network and meet as many investors and home buyers as possible. So definitely go to youtube.com/cooperative solutions, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and colleagues. I want you to go ahead and like our Facebook page for continuing free real estate investor education at facebook.com/cooperative solutions. And definitely, if you're a new or experienced investor, realtor, private lender, whatever your capacity, go ahead and join our prime buyers list at dcmetrorealestatedeals.com.